He is an invaluable asset to the CIA because he is their best hacker and analyst. But when his wife tragically dies in a fishy terrorist attack in London, he knew had to go rogue to get his revenge. This is the recap of the movie The Amateur.
Yeah.
Put the money on the chair. Count it. Hardware's right there. Go ahead.
Shit.
You just armed an IED. It's on a beam trigger. You drop the lid, move away, or cross the beam. It detonates.
Yeah. See,
right.
see, I'm not lying. Now, deactivate this thing. Hey, where you going? Where you going?
You jump really fast. You might survive the blast.
Please! Wait!
In the opening scene, Charlie is seen in his garage repairing the small plane his wife, Sarah, had gifted him on his birthday. As he works, Sarah informs him of her upcoming business trip to London and invites him to join her once more. However, Charlie gently declines the offer as he is focused on his workload. After Sarah leaves, Charlie arrives at the CIA headquarters, moving through the security systems he had personally designed, and makes his way to the decryption and analysis department. Soon, he receives a message from Inquiline, a mysterious contact who has been providing him with classified information for years. This time, Inquiline warns that the documents Charlie will be receiving are especially dangerous and could put the CIA itself at risk. Although Charlie tries to deduce Inquiline's location and guess Istanbul, the source dismisses his speculation. Intrigued by the intel, Charlie begins analyzing the encrypted documents but quickly realizes the code is beyond his immediate ability to solve. After his lunch break, Charlie gets a call from Sarah, who tells him that she has safely arrived in London. Charlie already knew, as he tells her that he has been tracking her flight remotely. He then tells Sarah that he will call her back and hangs up as he is eager to return to the documents. When he once again fails to decrypt them using his standard system, he moves to a restricted CIA facility with more advanced technology. After intensive work, Charlie finally cracks the encryption and is stunned by what he uncovers. The documents reveal a top-secret government cover-up involving a drone strike disguised as a suicide bombing. The attack resulted in the deaths of 150 people, including French Special Forces and Danish Marines. The operation was orchestrated by Chief Moore, who is Charlie's supervisor. Back home that evening, Charlie attempts to call Sarah, but could only reach her voicemail. The next morning, Charlie arrives at the office to find Moore waiting for him. Then Moore escorts him to a meeting with O'Brien, the new CIA director, who informs him that there has been a terrorist attack at a London hotel and that Sarah was among the casualties. When Charlie struggles to accept this news and insists on contacting her, Moore shows him live news coverage reporting that 4 terrorists had stormed the hotel, taking hostages and killing 2 people. Moore then plays the hotel's security footage, which confirms Sarah's death during the incident. When Charlie returns home, he is met by a crowd of reporters and police trying to restrict the press. With the help of his friend, Charlie manages to enter his house without having to face the media. The next day, he confronts Moore and supervisor Caleb, as he is deeply suspicious of the circumstances surrounding the attack. Charlie questions how the terrorists could have bypassed the dense security in London and driven into heavy traffic unnoticed. Moore assures him that the investigation is ongoing, but Caleb dismisses him and advises him to return home. Later on, Charlie goes to the airport to retrieve Sarah's body and her belongings. At home, while unpacking her suitcase, he discovers a gift she had bought for him, triggering an emotional breakdown. Though he is still overwhelmed by grief the next day, he decides to return to work. When he arrives, he quickly gains access to the restricted CIA computer system and hacks into the security footage from the hotel and surrounding streets where the attack occurred. By carefully analyzing the footage, he reconstructs a detailed timeline of the events. The investigation reveals that the 4 terrorists began by stealing a vehicle in the East End before entering the hotel through the service entrance. It becomes clear the terrorists had a scheduled meeting with an Indonesian firm called Impact Investments. However, the meeting had quickly turned violent when one of the firm's security guards grew aggressive, prompting the gang to open fire. This resulted in the immediate death of 1 guard and left another critically injured. The hotel security was quickly alerted and the police were contacted. But in a desperate attempt to escape, the terrorists had seized several hostages from a nearby conference room where Sarah was among those taken after she had bravely tried to help others flee the scene. Charlie had conducted voice and facial recognition analyses and successfully identified the 4 terrorists. They are Mishka from Moscow, Lawrence, a former South African Special Forces soldier, Horst, a mercenary, and Gretchen, a former intelligence officer. When Charlie eventually presents his findings to his superiors, their indifferent response makes him realize they had this information all along. In the end, they dismiss his concerns and direct him to attend therapy. But Charlie is still determined to uncover the truth, and he secretly embeds a hidden chip into his ID badge to bypass the security scanners. Back at his office, he prints the classified files and uses a skimmer on the printer to create a digital backup. That night, Charlie visits a bar and spends time at the jukebox before leaving. The next morning, he confronts his superiors again, this time armed with the damning documents. He accuses Moore of orchestrating several covert attacks, including the bombing of a Syrian hospital and a deadly strike on an allied base in Yemen, which had resulted in mass civilian casualties. He then issues a severe warning that if he does not deactivate a dead man's switch every 5 hours, the collected evidence will automatically be sent to top media outlets. In exchange for his silence, he demands full CIA training, false identities, cash, weapons, and all available information on his wife's killers. After the meeting, Charlie retreats to his car, visibly shaken and overwhelmed. In the meantime, Moore dismisses Charlie's threat as a bluff, but Caleb insists they cannot take that risk. So the team investigates how Charlie might have extracted the files and concludes that he likely used a skimmer on a printer. They trace Charlie's purchase of a magnetic strip, but remain puzzled about how he smuggled it in and out of the building. So they search Charlie's home where they find no clues, but their attention shifts to a bar Charlie had visited twice. There, they find an ABBA CD hidden under the jukebox. Upon playing the CD, it emits only static noise, but the team suspects it holds more than it seems. Eventually, Charlie arrives at a CIA training facility, where he's greeted by Colonel Henderson. He immediately starts training at the shooting range, but Charlie struggles with accuracy and can only hit the target when standing extremely close. However, he quickly proves his expertise in bomb making, impressing Henderson with his speed and precision. Henderson then pushes Charlie to memorize his new identity under pressure, using physical force to ensure Charlie can recall his cover story even in stressful situations. Afterward, Charlie's new passport is handed over to him. That night, Henderson visits Charlie's room and tells him he isn't a killer. However, Charlie insists that his mission is about justice. To test him, Henderson hands Charlie a gun and orders him to aim at his chest. At this moment, Charlie's hands start to tremble uncontrollably, and he ultimately lowers the weapon, unable to follow through. Meanwhile, CIA agents continue working to decrypt the ABBA CD Charlie had planted. After hours of effort, they discover that Charlie's dead man's switch was a bluff. They quickly report their findings to their superiors, unaware that Charlie has been secretly listening to them the entire time. The chip Charlie had hidden in his ID badge was actually a bug embedded in the files he handed over, allowing him to track their communications. When Moore realizes this, he immediately calls Henderson and tells him to kill Charlie. But by then, Charlie had already escaped. Moore eventually uses the bug on the files to talk to Charlie directly, accusing him of treason. Charlie eventually discards his earpiece and boards a plane to London. When he arrives, he clears customs using his fake identity and travels to Paris. However, his alias is quickly flagged in the CIA's system, prompting Moore to send Henderson after him. Now in Paris, Charlie rents a hotel near a restaurant frequently visited by Gretchen. When she eventually shows up, he begins tracking her phone and spends the day monitoring her apartment. Once she leaves, Charlie seizes an opportunity when another tenant exits the building as he sneaks inside and uses an online tutorial to pick the lock to Gretchen's apartment. Inside, he photographs her schedule and discovers a gun, which he decides to keep. Suddenly, his tracker alerts him that Gretchen is returning, so he quickly steps out and hides in the stairwell. But when she finally arrives, he hesitates and cannot bring himself to shoot. Frustrated, he returns to his hotel, and that night, he imagines Sarah being in the room with him. When he eventually reviews the photos he had taken, Charlie notices Gretchen's frequent hospital visits. So, he hacks into her medical records, where he learns about her severe allergies. The next morning, Charlie buys a large number of flowers and follows Gretchen to the hospital. He soon disguises as a doctor, and he enters the exam room while Gretchen is undergoing some tests. He immediately locks the door and traps her inside the medical chamber, slowly filling it with pollen from the flowers. Gretchen begins to panic as her allergies intensify while the real doctors and nurses try to intervene, but the door won't open. As Gretchen starts to weaken, Charlie demands to know Horst's location, since Horst is the one responsible for Sarah's death. But Charlie's attempt to extract information from Gretchen takes a downer when she becomes overwhelmed by the pollen, and she starts struggling to speak. This eventually makes Charlie open the chamber, and Gretchen immediately attacks, slamming him against a desk and igniting a brutal fight that rages across the entire room. Charlie manages to draw his gun, but Gretchen overpowers him and escapes. In a desperate attempt to catch her, Charlie chases her into the street, but before he can reach her, Gretchen is struck by a speeding car. Shaken by the accident, Charlie forces himself to approach her lifeless body and quickly grabs her phone before fleeing the scene. He quickly throws away the blood-stained lab coat and returns to his hotel to clean up and pack his belongings. Later that night, Charlie boards a bus to Marseilles. Meanwhile, news of Gretchen's death reaches the CIA, and Director O'Brien confronts Moore, who simply states that it seems Gretchen was killed by one of their own agents. In the meantime in Marseilles, Charlie tries to drown his guilt at a bar, as he is haunted by what happened. For a brief moment, he thinks he sees Sarah dancing, but it turns out to be a stranger. His attention then quickly shifts when he spots Henderson approaching him. He panics and starts to push through the crowd until he escapes the bar and runs frantically through the streets. He then enters another bar to hide, but soon, Henderson tracks him there too, forcing Charlie to run into the bathroom. Inside, he realizes that there's no escape, and he eventually emerges and sits with Henderson at the bar. However, in a sudden twist, Charlie shows him a countdown timer on his phone, and as he runs away, a bomb detonates in the bathroom. The explosion throws the bar into chaos, giving Charlie the cover he needs to vanish. Henderson loses track of him, as the phone's tracker goes offline. The next morning, Charlie contacts Inquiline for assistance and secures a flight on a cargo plane to Turkey. Upon arriving in Istanbul, Charlie visits a restaurant and texts Inquiline. Then he notices a man's phone ringing, and as he starts to approach the man, a woman intercepts him and tells him to check his own phone. After leaving the restaurant, the same woman confirms that she is Inquiline. She already knows about Sarah and instructs Charlie to hide his hat and backpack in a shopping bag to avoid drawing attention. She then advises him to spend some time shopping before they meet again at a nearby garage. When they reunite, Inquiline drives Charlie to her home and shares her story. She became a hacker 6 years ago after her husband's death. He had been a CIA asset embedded within Russian intelligence and the original Inquiline. Official reports claimed he died in an accidental fall from a window, and Inquiline reveals that her home is the only place she has managed to stay longer than 3 years, though she's always prepared to end herself if the Russians come for her. As they begin planning their next move, Inquiline explains that Horst is responsible for hiring mercenaries on Moore's behalf, while Lawrence serves as an arms dealer. She then offers to pose as a weapons supplier to gain access to Lawrence and advance their mission. So the two start working together as they focus on Mishka, who is a frequent traveler who carelessly posts on his social media pages. When they analyzed one of his photos, they saw a woman who frequently appears with him. Running her image through facial recognition leads them to her Instagram profile, confirming she is currently in Spain. In the meantime, Caleb instructs his team to maintain surveillance on the terrorists in hopes of locating Charlie. At the same time, O'Brien confronts Moore and orders him to cease all unauthorized Black Ops operations. However, Moore calmly assures her of his cooperation, though his actions suggest otherwise. After their meeting, O'Brien is shown a picture confirming that Moore has secretly sent Henderson to Spain. So, she quickly dispatches her own agent to follow Henderson. Meanwhile, Charlie and Inquiline track Mishka by hacking into the hotel's security system. Charlie then travels to Madrid and checks into the same hotel, where he learns Mishka frequently visits a rooftop pool that connects two buildings. So, Charlie prepares a device and hides it inside the hotel to use during his confrontation with Mishka. But unknown to him, Moore had already updated Henderson on Charlie's current location. In the meantime, Charlie spots a familiar man at the bar and quickly realizes he is under surveillance. Inquiline confirms through facial recognition that the man is a CIA agent, and she urges Charlie to abort the mission, but he insists on continuing. When Mishka heads to the pool, Charlie confronts him and demands for information about Horst. To pressure him, Charlie threatens to destroy the pool's structure. Not believing he could do that, Mishka dismisses the threat and swims away, prompting Charlie to activate the device. The glass pool begins to crack, and as Mishka desperately races to escape, the glass shatters, sending him falling to his death as the water pours out to the streets. Immediately, Inquiline alerts Charlie that Henderson and the other agent are closing in. A tense chase begins through the hotel corridors, and as Henderson nearly captures Charlie, the second agent suddenly attacks, forcing Henderson into a violent fight in the laundry room. They trade blows and smash each other against the machines until Henderson traps the agent's head inside one of the machines. Although the agent shoots Henderson, he was still able to seize the gun and kill the agent. Charlie briefly considers intervening, but ends up choosing to run when Inquiline reminds him of the danger. The following day, O'Brien questions Moore about Charlie's whereabouts, but Moore claims Charlie is on bereavement leave and is dismissed. However, after he leaves, O'Brien reviews surveillance footage from the hotel where she sees Charlie. In the meantime, Caleb's team also examines the same footage and realizes Charlie had an accomplice. So they investigate his encrypted chats and uncover his communications with Inquiline. Tracing her identity, they eventually connect her to the deceased agent known as Inquiline, concluding that his wife must have assumed his role. That evening, as Charlie and Inquiline sleep side by side for comfort, they are abruptly awakened by the screeching of Inquiline's birds outside. When she checks the security cameras, they spot multiple agents rapidly closing in on their location. So the two quickly escape through a hidden tunnel concealed within the walls as a tracking drone circles above. They maneuver through another building to avoid detection and manage to flee the neighborhood just moments before agents storm the house. By the time the agents arrive, Inquiline's system has already wiped all data, leaving no trace behind. The pair then race down the beach and reach Inquiline's car, but the drone spots them, and this triggers an intense pursuit. Agents chase them aggressively, opening fire and even continuing the pursuit by boat. During the relentless chase, the agents critically damage the car, and Inquiline is mortally wounded. With no other option, Charlie moves her body aside and takes the wheel, driving until he shakes off their pursuers. Eventually, he parks the car in a garage and bids Inquiline's body a final goodbye. However, as he is still determined to continue, Charlie contacts Lawrence, pretending to be an arms dealer, and arranges a meeting. He then buys new electronics and travels to Romania. In an abandoned building, Charlie records himself and hacks into a Berlin security feed to mislead the CIA, making them believe he's operating from Berlin. When Lawrence arrives at the meeting point, he finds a ringing phone placed on a chair. Following Charlie's instructions, Lawrence opens a nearby box filled with bombs. Then Charlie tells him that any movement will trigger the explosives, as he appears behind him and demands to know Horst's location. Lawrence reveals that Horst operates in Russian waters and typically receives shipments at a Baltic seaport. He explains that Horst only communicates through coded messages sent by his men and offers his phone containing all necessary contacts. Charlie takes the phone and walks away, leaving the bombs to detonate and take out Lawrence. Soon, news of Lawrence's death reaches the CIA, as they eventually realize that they were tracking false footage. Around that time, Charlie had traveled to a Russian hotel, where he thought about Sarah's face and eventually opened her final gift, which is a puzzle that, after solving it, reveals a heartfelt message from his late wife. The next day, Charlie heads to the port, where he spots a suspicious vehicle, and sends a coded message to Horst's men. He then sees a man check his phone near the car, and Charlie quietly follows him, photographs his boat, and later traces the vessel to a specific yacht by tracking its registration. He then carefully studies Horst's likely sea routes and prepares for the confrontation. But when Charlie approaches the boat the next morning, he's ambushed and knocked unconscious, as he drops Sarah's puzzle on the ground. He awakens aboard Horst's yacht, where he confronts him, revealing that he has discovered a bomb Charlie had previously planted in his boat. Believing Charlie lacks the nerve for direct confrontation, Horst challenges him to pull the trigger on him, but Charlie refuses as he confesses that he is only there to see the look on Horst's face. Suddenly, the yacht veers off course, and this sends the entire crew into panic. That was when Charlie reveals that he had hacked into the yacht's systems, which are controlled by the CIA, and using his verse knowledge of their protocols, he had redirected the yacht to Finnish waters, where the Finnish Navy and Interpol swiftly surrounded and arrested Horst and his men. Towards the end of the movie, we see O'Brien publicly announce the arrest of all corrupt agents exploiting CIA resources for illegal operations. Henderson approaches Charlie to express how proud he is of him, and after visiting Sarah's grave, Charlie finally returns home and takes Sarah's plane for a long-awaited flight. And that's the story of the movie, The Amateur. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling us what you think about the movie. Until next time, stay safe.